the dragon's destiny. Helena stood on the balcony of Mason's sprawling mansion, the cool night air brushing against her skin. The engagement ring on her finger felt like a shackle, glittering in the moonlight, a constant reminder of the men she once thought she loved. But beneath his polished exterior, Mason was a master of deception. He had manipulated her, controlled her, even raised his hand to her when his rage boiled over. Tonight, she was done. Her escape plan was in motion. Just one more step and she'd be free of Mason's world. But little did Helena know, her fate was about to take a turn she could never have predicted. Drake Blackwood had spent centuries searching, his dragon's instincts leading him to the farthest corners of the earth in search of his fated mate. The legend spoke of her, a woman with golden hair, a human who would ignite the dormant magic within him, one destined to stand beside him as the golden dragon. His desire for her burned, an ache that had grown unbearable over the centuries. Every moment without her felt like an eternity. His instincts had led him here, to this city, to this very night. He could feel her presence. Somewhere close, she was waiting for him. He didn't know her name, her face, or how their paths would cross, but he knew one thing with certainty: tonight, he would find her. And then, there she was. He spotted her from the shadows, on the balcony, her golden hair shimmering under the moonlight. The sight of her took his breath away. His dragon stirred restlessly beneath his skin, the pull toward her so powerful it felt like gravity itself was bending to bring them together. His fated mate. After all these years, she was real. And she was in danger. He could sense it in the way her eyes darted nervously, the way her fingers trembled against the railing. His keen hearing caught the sound of footsteps approaching her from inside the mansion. The monster was coming. In that moment, Drake's protective instincts roared to life. He wouldn't lose her now. Not when he had just found her. Helena heard the door behind her creak open. She froze, her pulse quickening as Mason's voice echoed through the room, dark and menacing. "Helena, my darling, trying to leave me." Before she could respond, Mason lunged toward her. But before he could lay a hand on her, the room exploded with a deafening roar. A massive, dark figure tore through the balcony doors, sending shattered glass raining down like ice. Helena's breath hitched as she stumbled backward, her heart pounding in her chest. There, standing between her and Mason, was a man unlike anyone she had ever seen. His black hair, wild and untamed, caught the moonlight. His eyes, molten gold, fierce, and filled with unyielding power, locked onto hers. "Who the hell are you?" Mason bellowed, rage flaring in his voice. Drake didn't even glance at Mason. His entire being was focused on Helena, as if the rest of the world had ceased to exist. His voice was deep, commanding, and laced with sarcasm. "Your worst nightmare." Before Mason could react, Drake moved with the speed of a predator. In a flash, his hand gripped Mason's throat, lifting him off the ground effortlessly. "You dare lay a hand on her?" Drake's voice rumbled with lethal promise. "Not anymore." Helena barely had time to blink before Mason's lifeless body hit the ground with a sickening thud, his neck twisted at an unnatural angle. The man who had terrorized her for so long was gone, just like that. Drake turned to her, his gaze softening instantly as he took a step closer. "Are you all right?" His voice, once terrifyingly cold, now held a warmth that confused her. Who are you?" Helena whispered, unable to tear her eyes away from his. He hesitated for a moment, then answered truthfully, "I've been looking for you, for centuries." Helena frowned. "That's, sweet. But I've only been alive for 26 years. Drake smirked, his eyes glinting with amusement. "Not exactly what I meant." He moved closer, and Helena's heart pounded in her chest, not out of fear, but out of something else entirely. His presence was overwhelming, magnetic. She could feel the heat radiating from him, and it wasn't just his power. It was something primal, something that stirred deep inside her. She had never felt anything like this before. "What are you?" she breathed, her eyes wide. Drake smiled, but it wasn't a comforting smile. It was dangerous. Seductive. The one who was meant for you. The question is, are you ready for that? The tension between them crackled like fire. Helena's pulse quickened, and her breath caught as Drake reached out, gently brushing a lock of her golden hair behind her ear. His touch sent a shiver down her spine. He leaned closer, his lips hovering near her ear. I think you've always known something was missing, Helena. That there was more to you than you realized. His words sent her mind reeling, but her body responded instinctively. She could feel it, the undeniable pull toward him. Something deep inside her was waking up, and it terrified her. Yet, it thrilled her at the same time. Unable to resist the magnetism between them, Helena closed the distance. Their lips met in a fiery kiss, and it felt as if the world tilted on its axis. Time stopped, and nothing else mattered but the two of them. His hands roamed her body, and she melted into him, desire flooding her senses. In that moment, nothing existed but them. The passion between them was intoxicating, wild. The connection they shared was electric, and as they made love, Helena felt her entire body shift, her skin glowing with golden light. Drake's eyes widened as he watched the transformation unfold. Helena, your power, he whispered, his voice thick with awe. Helena gasped as waves of energy surged through her. She could feel her bones shifting, her body changing. Golden scales shimmered across her skin, and wings, majestic and powerful, unfurled from her back. She had become the golden dragon, the legendary being spoken of in myths. Drake's heart swelled with pride, awe filling his voice. I knew it. I knew you were the one. Panting, Helena stared at her reflection in the glass, struggling to make sense of what had just happened. So, what? I'm a dragon now. Is this supposed to be normal? Drake chuckled, pulling her close. Normal. Not for most people, no. But for us. This is fate. Great, Helena muttered with a sarcastic roll of her eyes. Just what every girl dreams of, waking up after a one-night stand as a mythical creature. Drake laughed, the sound deep and rich. Could be worse. Worse, she raised an eyebrow. How? You could have woken up with Mason. Helena couldn't help but laugh at that, shaking her head. Okay, fair point. But deep down, she knew this was the beginning of something much bigger. Something she was destined for. And as she looked into Drake's eyes, she realized that whatever was coming, they would face it together. In the days that followed, Helena embraced her newfound power, learning from Drake about the responsibilities of being a dragon, and more importantly, what it meant to be his mate. Their bond grew stronger with each passing moment, their love deepening as they faced new challenges together. With Mason gone and his threats eliminated, Helena was finally free. But more than that, she was powerful. She was no longer the scared woman running from her past. She was the golden dragon, fierce, strong, and unstoppable. And together, with Drake by her side, they would take on the world, fated mates, bound by love, magic, and destiny.